Hello everyone, welcome to a new chess video. Let me introduce you to the Dutch defense, this formidable defense that you can see right now on the board. It's so simple and so effective that I'm absolutely sure that once you finish watching this video, most of you will start playing this defense in all your games. When can we use the Dutch defense? When your opponent plays the queen's pawn, okay? We're going to play the Dutch defense when our opponent plays d4. The Dutch defense is this move right here, f5, and it hides some plans that are going to blow your mind. The most common move order for white is to play c4 first. What's really great about this defense is that it doesn't matter much what our opponent does, because we're always going to do the same thing, just the way we like it. Our second move, let's remember it well, will be e6. At this point, we can already see that our attack is going to head to this side. You always have to learn to read and communicate with your pawns. Wherever your pawn chain is pointing, that's where your attack is going to go. Here, white has several possible moves. Among the most common are knight to c3, developing one knight, or knight to f3, developing the other knight. These are the two most commonly used, but it doesn't matter to us because we're going to play knight to f6. And now, when they play knight to c3, which we were expecting, we'll make this move that you need to remember. When they play knight to c3, we'll come in with bishop to b4, a very important move. Why is this move so important? You're about to see why. Here, white has a lot of options. A terrible move would be to try to chase away this bishop from here, because what we want is to trade this bishop. For this knight, we want to do it no matter what. So if they play a 3, they're letting us capture and gain a tempo. A much better move would be e3, for example, right? Keeping the center solid so you can also develop the bishop. But no matter if they play e3, what do we want to do? Trade this bishop for the knight. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, come on, chess teacher, how can it be that on the fourth move, you're already giving your opponent the bishop pair for nothing? Well, this is very important because if you're watching this video, you're going to understand it. What we want to do in the Dutch defense is fight for this square here, which is called the e4 square. Why is the square so important? Because it's going to let us control the whole game. So if we know we want to control e4, we've just eliminated one of its defenders directly, because this knight was defending it perfectly. And besides, this is a light square, right? So our dark squared bishop could never defend this square. We've traded a bishop that would never fight for this square for a knight that's the perfect defender of it. And now you'll see why it's so important to control the e4 point. All right, if you've understood the logic here of this position, you'll know that we need to control this square. For example, after castling, they might play bishop to e2 or, a bit more precisely, bishop to d3. Why? You already know. So, following our plan, let's think for a moment. This bishop can't get out this way because there's a big pawn barrier. So I'm going to develop it via the b7 square. And where does it point from the b7 square? Exactly, to the spot we want to control. And not only that, it also points directly at the opponent's castled king. So what are we going to do here? Bishop to b7. As you can see, if you understand the ideas behind this defense, you'll be clearly superior to your opponents. That's why my goal in this video is for you to fully understand these ideas. And you'll see, because we have a lot of little tricks that white can fall for. There are tons of them. Now, a serious question. What could white's pieces do? As you can see, they have a hard time developing. They love to break with e4 to free their bishop, but breaking with e4 isn't possible. Why? Because we've done a great job controlling that central square. So they can't break through. This bishop can't get out this way. If they want, they can try to develop it via a3, but that's not a good move because we simply block it with d6, and they're actually helping us. Now this bishop does absolutely nothing, and they've helped us leave a free square to develop our knight without wasting time. So if they play bishop to a3, either now or later, just remember that we're going to play d6. Why? To cut off the bishop's diagonal. It's that simple. Why is bishop to a3 usually not the best plan? Because here, an interesting plan that white has is to launch the a pawn in an attack. Honestly, it doesn't really matter what they do to us. For example, if they try to jump toward the center, we should apply the d6 logic, which would just make this knight retreat again. So, as you can see, white doesn't have many moves to make. All right, so here we can't waste any more time. We have to act quickly. And what is the move we need to make quickly? Knight to e4. We've done it. We've placed this beast of a piece on one of the best squares, if not the very best square on the board. Not only does it attack the pawn on c3, but it also controls some super important squares. We've placed the knight, as Nimzowitsch used to say, on an advanced post. And if the game, all right, here we're attacking the c3 square. White has several options here. The first thing they could do is defend the pawn, but now let's see what would happen if they do that. You have to be very careful. Remember this well, okay, friends? Remember this one. Be very careful if they play knight to d2. They're pulling back the knight, but more importantly, they're offering us that pawn as a gift. Should you take it? No, and I'll explain why. If we take this pawn, which at first glance looks free, they simply play queen to c2, and where do we move this knight? Well, the only square it has is to retreat to e4, so they could trade it off, and as you can see, white has gotten the pawn back, ends up with a better center, attacks us really strongly, also attacks us over here, and most importantly, we've lost all our attack and our knight. That's why we don't want to, and this is very important. If they play knight to d2, sorry, this missing pawn, if they play knight to d2, we don't want to take here. But don't worry, because we have an excellent move, queen to h4, and now the problems start for white. As you can see, all our pieces are aiming at the king side, including the rook, which can join the attack here. There are two typical moves, the two that people always play against me, and both of them lose. All right, the most typical response, the one they're almost always going to play against us, is g3. They're threatening our queen. This queen here is really annoying, and since we're not threatening anything, they try to chase her away, so we leave. But here, my friends, we have an incredible move. What is that move? Instead of moving the queen away, knight to g5, spectacular. They can't take our queen because then comes one of the most beautiful checkmates I've ever seen in my life. Knight to h3, checkmate, since this bishop cuts off any possible escape for the king. So here, if the queen attacks us, knight to g5, this queen can't be captured. But it's not just that the queen can't be taken. Be careful, because against almost any move, we have knight to h3, which in this case would again be checkmate. Let's see, this move here, queen to h4, which is very good. It's not possible to drive this queen away with g3. Very good, Chessteacher. It's not possible to drive the queen away with g3. So what are we threatening? Actually, we're not really threatening anything here. You're absolutely right. This queen is aiming here, but no one else is targeting this spot. That is, the only real threat we have now is to take on c3. Now it would be possible because this queen is supporting the d4 square, so if we took here, queen to c2 would already work for us because we could retreat and this square would be very well defended. So here, what are the white pieces going to do? Always defend the c2 square. And if they don't do this, it's because they drive our queen away. But here, again, we've won the game. I'll explain how to checkmate in this position because it's simple. You just need to pay attention. We're simply going to let this bishop come in by first exchanging this knight, thus opening up the whole diagonal for the bishop. All right, and now, Chessteacher, it seems like we've run out of attacking options. The queen is targeting the dark squares, the bishop is targeting the light squares. It doesn't look like we're going to checkmate here. Well, remember this spectacular bombshell move. Look, I really love this opening. I'm telling you honestly. Leave a like if you want more videos about this opening, because I truly love it. Bishop takes on g2 ends up being a decisive move. If they don't accept the sacrifice and decide to move the rook, they're going to have a really hard time, because we'll simply place the bishop here and end up checkmating. So this sacrifice must be accepted. Once this sacrifice is accepted, there's no way to escape. Our plan? Place the queen on f3. Right? Place the queen on f3. Well, it's very simple. First, we give a check, and now when the king moves, he can't go here because that's check. He has to go to h1 no matter what. Then we place the queen on f3, and it's even with check. As you can see, we have the queen cutting off the king, and now all we have to do is bring in the rook. That's all we have, a queen and a rook, and that's going to be enough to deliver checkmate. What can white try here as a last resort? Well, move the rook somewhere to try to escape this way, because otherwise rook to g6 would be checkmate. But don't worry, because we're going to deliver it just the same. Remember this, if they've moved the rook to escape on this side, we're going to stay consistent. Do we want them to escape? No. So if this queen switches sides, and now the diagonal we're controlling is this one. So what are we threatening? Rook to g6 followed by queen to g2, checkmate. The only way they can try to hold on, as you can see I'm explaining all the possible defenses, so that no matter what they do, you can checkmate them. The only thing they can try is king to h1. That way, if we now put the rook here, they could play rook to g1 to defend against everything. But that's just wishful thinking. We're going to force the king to move back here, and how we're going to do it? With rook to h6. As you can see, we're threatening mate in 1. Is there any piece that can come to defend? No. The only conceivable way the king can truly attempt to escape this predicament is by making this specific move right here. But now, since we have the formidable queen's barrier firmly in place, rook to g6 check, the king absolutely has to come to this precise square. It's the only available move. And then, queen to g2 is an undeniable checkmate. The whole bunker to place our knight on e4, as we were explaining. We just saw that knight to d2 was a dangerous, double-edged move, but if we know it, we'll end up delivering checkmate. Be careful. If you hadn't seen this video, you probably would have captured this pawn here for sure. But okay, knight to d2 might not be the most popular move, especially if the playing level isn't very high, right? What's the most popular move? If we attack a pawn, defend it. So they're defending the c3 pawn, and now they're attacking this knight with several pieces. They're putting a lot of pressure on the e4 square. Alright, here comes one of my favorite opening tricks. It's a trick that everyone falls for. We're going to play knight to c6. It's a super important move. Why? Because they're threatening to push this pawn forward a lot, which could have serious consequences, since they could start attacking us a lot on this flank. Knight to c6, the first thing it does is stop this possible pawn advance, because we would simply capture it. Alright, but what happens with knight to c6? It stops defending the most important part of the position. So here, the players with the white pieces start rubbing their hands together like this. I've managed to win a pawn on e4, because look how many pieces are attacking it. 1, 2, and how many are just defending the pawn. So here, white says, well, I'll just capture this knight. Bishop takes on e. Pawn takes and queen takes, they've managed to win a pawn. And not just any pawn, but the most important pawn in the position. But this is a serious mistake, my friends, because now we're going to pin the queen with a discovered attack by playing knight to h5, gaining a tempo. Alright, the queen has to move back, but be careful, because we're threatening this pawn. So the queen has to come to d3. And the game. And the game is won in the following way. A brutal rook sacrifice. The knight falls and everything. Rook takes on f3. We've won a whole piece, so they have to capture. And then simply the queen and bishop will deliver checkmate. Queen to g5, check, the only move, king to h1, and now bishop takes on f3, checkmate. So we know that we should play knight to c6, remember this well, to prevent them from advancing here. And to put a little pressure on our opponents, right? So that they capture this knight on e4. Many of you will say, but it's as simple as cutting off the diagonal and then capturing this knight. And be careful, this looks really good, and in fact, it's been played against me many times. But it's simple. Let me explain. Even if they don't fall for your little tricks, you can keep up the pressure and win the game anyway. For example, what is attacking our knight? What's our plan? Well, we move it away. For now, we're not threatening anything, but our opponent could capture this knight here and win the pawn. Don't worry, because our attack is much stronger than the pawn. Queen to e8, a move that will always work for you, because when you can't break in through the dark squares, you swap the queen. The queen is very flexible and will come in through the light squares. And be careful, because here I often see some really serious mistakes. For example, this queen is vulnerable to discovered attacks, so a very interesting move could be to bring the queen over here. Right now, that wouldn't be possible, because we'd be facing a fork. So, well, bring the queen over here, for example. But that doesn't matter to us, because our rook, our bishop, our queen, everything is well positioned to win the game. Let me explain. Here, we could already win directly with this. We attack the rook, and now we attack the queen. This is a typical maneuver with this knight when they decide to push the d5 pawn, because it leaves us this great square for our knight. We attack the queen, and here we've already won the game. How do we win a game? Let's see, I'm going to try. If you want, you can pause the video to see who gets the move right. I'm going to give the solution right now. Here's the solution. Rook takes on f3. Once again, the rook comes to the rescue, winning the game. Why? Because now d6 isn't checkmate, but it's check, and we win the rook because it's the classic double attack. So here we would win the rook, and we'd probably already have a strong enough advantage. Plus, the king is very exposed, so we could also bring in the bishop to win the game. This bishop can't move either, because then we capture the other rook. Don't tell me the Dutch defense doesn't hide some brutal attacks. It's also very possible that instead of developing the bishop to d3, they develop it to e2. The plans are very similar. The good thing is that if you remember the ideas well, you're going to win a ton of games. Pay attention to this. Castle, castle. Our opponent can play, for example, a 4, a typical attacking plan that, be careful, is very dangerous if we do not know how to stop it. But of course, since we know how to stop it, there is no problem. Knight to e4, an extremely important move that we are always going to make. That means if it occurs to you to play knight to e4, you have studied this video well, or any video about the Dutch defense. Okay, very good. Here we are talking about this pawn. Well, it should be defended. The most logical move is rook a3. Very good. Whenever they play a4 against us, what are we going to do? Knight to d6. We have decided that this attack is not going anywhere with knight to d6. Now, they cannot even exchange this knight with the bishop, because now the bishop is not even attacking the knight. But be careful, because here it is also very good. How should we continue? Well, look, here the star move we are going to make is the following. Our idea is to play knight to a5, a fantastic move. Why? Because this knight on a5 is very well placed. Do you remember what I told you? We've exchanged the bishop for a knight on move 4. Why do you do that, chess teacher? Well, look, thanks to all these weaknesses, the knight here attacks this square. It also attacks this other square in many cases. We can also put pressure with a6, and most importantly, who is going to kick the knight out of here? No one can. So this knight is very well placed. For example, if here they decide to play bishop to bishop to a3, excuse me, you don't even need to play d6. You could go straight for rook to h6. That's a move that will always work for us, as long as we can bring the rook over on this file here. And if they play bishop to a3, we can play rook to f6. A very good move. Very nice. Now, what happens if, for example, they play, let's say this one. Let's play this, we play this, and now they try to exchange this very strong knight we have on e4. Very good move. Well, suddenly, all we have to do is the following. We capture here, and now we would have a fork. We'd be winning the queen and the rook, just like that. That's why, right now, it's not possible to try to exchange this knight here. And a lot of you will say, Chessteacher, that's an easy fix. First, before all that, I play knight to d2, so you can't make any progress. In other words, for example, before you move your knight over here, I try to exchange the knight. Would that be possible? Yes, but don't worry, because it's really simple, okay? It's very simple. Knight takes, queen takes. We place the knight here, threatening a fork. The queen has to come to defend. And now, what are we going to do? Well, we have multiple possible moves. If they attack our rook first, you already know. This comes over here. It's not rocket science. We threaten the fork, it comes over here. It's just about understanding the ideas, but you should know that this game is pretty much already won. Alright, now they've moved over here, so what we're going to do is try to launch a checkmate attack. We attack with the rook, we want to bring in the queen, we want to bring in the bishop. This looks dangerous. And here, you definitely have to make a decision. The queen is coming in here with some pretty drastic consequences. So here, playing g3 is very tempting. It seems like it defends everything. It stops the queen from coming in. It's true that it opens up this bishop, but well, afterwards you can defend everything just fine, or even do this to defend, right? But no. Here, we've already won the game with a fabulous move. Look, I'm just explaining attack plans here that you can use in all your games. The queen comes in through h4, sacrificing herself completely. Queen to h4, double exclamation mark. What a great move. It threatens checkmate in one. The only way to save themselves is to capture this queen, but even then they can't escape, because thanks to our bishop and our rook, we're gonna give check, and the king is stuck. Thanks to our bishop, they could simply block with their bishop, but then we have rook takes bishop, checkmate on the next move. All right, and now comes the best part of all. Do you remember what I told you? We're looking to trade, this is the foundation, this bishop for this knight. Why? To wreck their pawn structure and to control e4. But a lot of times they don't let us destroy this pawn structure, and for example, they defend the knight. Queen to b3 is a move I see in a lot of games. And I love when they play it against me. I really do. It defends the knight and attacks the bishop. There's one thing you need to know here. Do we want to trade this bishop for this knight? Yes. But for now, we're going to try to delay it as long as we can. For example, at this moment when they're threatening us, we're going to play a 5. And here, look, I've always played this, and they've always replied with a 3 to kick out this bishop and basically say, from now on, either you leave or you trade, right? Or not, right? Because we have a really great move, and I always play it really fast, so they think I just blundered the bishop. 5, sorry, 4 threatens the cleat. That's not possible. Pawn takes, because we would capture the queen right. But of course, here white thinks, well, I'll just capture it with a queen, and nothing at all has happened here. I've got an extra bishop, and the game is practically won for me. But no, what we've actually done is trap their queen. Incredible, and I've done it many times. Knight to c6. We've managed to trap the opponent's queen. It only has 2 squares to go to. If the queen goes to b5, simply rook to a5, and the queen has no escape. If the queen goes to c5, it's exactly the same, but first we need to play the subtle b6 to force the queen onto that square. And now, yes, rook to a5 would win the queen. If they develop this knight first, you develop this one to wait for them to develop the other. But if they play knight to c3 first, you can go straight in with the bishop. There's no problem at all. You've already seen that queen to b3 doesn't scare us at all. On the contrary, we love it because we have this plan to trap the queen. But what happens if queen to c2? Because here it defends the knight very well. Should we capture it? Well, not for now. Our idea is to capture it, yes, but only when we're forced to. Because that way, our opponents lose a tempo. For example, we can keep developing. Knight to f3, knight to f6 for us. Our opponent can play knight to f3, we castle, and they can play, for example, if they play a3 here, then we would capture, right? They can recapture with the queen, which is why they placed it there. And for example, I can play b6, a very important move to control the key diagonal, and especially the equilibrium point. At this point, it's not a bad idea to play bishop to g5. We just need to be consistent. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to play d6 to defend it with the other knight, and in the future, move the queen, for example, to e8 so we can come through here. At that point, we can already jump with this knight over here, and the other one will be replaced over here. For example, let me explain it to you very simply. e3, we play knight b d7, bishop e2, and we can already play queen e8 directly. Or maybe it's better to first place the bishop properly. Now, yes, queen to e8, and whatever our opponent does. For example, just making something up, an attack on the queen side. We could already come through here, and we'd even be threatening the queen and also the bishop. Thanks to what? Thanks to the fact that the other knight has come to help. So remember this well. When this knight gets pinned by the bishop, the other knight comes to help, and the plan is the same, jump to e5. But be careful, move the queen first so we don't leave it hanging. And now comes the most fun part of the video, so pay attention to the next moves. So you can see that what I'm telling you is true, and that no matter what they play, we can carry out our plans. I will show you this game really quickly, where white played knight to c3, black immediately went for the pin, and white played bishop to d2, a move we haven't even covered in the video. Doesn't that bother you? No, because we know the plans inside out. Bishop 6 to control this square. The game continued with knight f3, bishop e7, as you can see, the usual stuff. e3, knight f6. Black is preparing really well. Do we take here? No, not yet, because we're not being post-op. So what do whites do? Sorry, what do black do? Well, they keep developing their pieces. Here, white has once again been persistent, and instead of threatening, they've just castled. No problem. d6, and from here on, as far as you want, I'll play the knight around here. And in the game, they played a3. A 3, a logical move that has to come sooner or later. They force us, to capture this knight here. After bishop takes, we've recaptured this knight. Now, this knight on e4 really is the boss of the position. We're threatening to win this bishop no matter where it goes. The only possible move is e1, which is actually a good move because it defends everything. That's what the white thesis did. And now, simply knight to d7. As you can see, the plans are similar. Knight to d2. Now, when the knight moves away, it gives us a clear path for the queen, and notice how this player with the black pieces finished it off so well. Question, if they capture this knight, with what do we recapture it? With the bishop or with the pawn? Well, here the most natural move would be to recapture with the bishop, but the best move would be to recapture with the pawn. If we recapture with the bishop, it's true we don't double our pawns, which would be the most natural, and we also don't block it like we do this way, but this pawn right now acts as a powerful blockade. In fact, we're threatening to bring the rook over here. Even bring the other one, bring the knight, and deliver checkmate. So it seems like the only way they have to free themselves is f3, but that would not be possible because the queen would come in with check. So how did white try to hold on in this position? Well, they defended this pawn to try to play f3, which is a very good idea. So what do black do? Rook to f6, a move that, as you can see, would occur to any of you if you studied this video well. Now, and simply what the black pieces did was exchange. This pawn here now exchange the bishop, as you can see, and simply bring the other rook over. So I double the rooks, and the opponent is far from bringing their other rook over to defend. All right, so now we're threatening to win a rook, right? Rook takes rook, queen takes rook. It could even be rook takes queen. Remember, this pawn is pinned, so white captured here. Knight takes to bring the knight into the attack, both on the e4 square and the g4 square. And here, white simply made another mistake. Throughout the game, they keep making tiny mistakes. And honestly, you have to be an extremely strong player not to make them. It's very difficult to play with the white pieces against this defense. e4 to make a discovered attack, but the queen simply moves away. And now this pawn is captured, since it's being attacked by two pieces. White played rook to f1, but this already seals the game, because after rook takes rook, king takes rook, comes queen to f6 check. And when the king moves, queen takes pawn. And as you can see, it's check. And not only is it check, but now we're also going to capture this bishop here. Obviously, white resigned here. As you can see, white didn't do what I explained, but the plans are always the same. If you like me showing you a real game on how to apply the opening or defense at the end of each video, let me know in the comments. I like to do whatever you all enjoy the most, to watch. So make sure to save this video to study it as many times as you need. Some people will have it down after 2 times. Others might need 7 or 8. It's all good. The video will always be there for free whenever you want to watch it, so save it well. I hope you loved it, and as always, I'll see you tomorrow in the next video, friends. Goodbye.